Hey everybody, welcome back to the 6th round post-fight show with me, Zane Simon. I'm once again solo this week. I was about to say my co-host Eddie Mercado, but he has gone missing, done RUNNOFT on me. But I'm coming to y'all just from the conclusion of UFC Vegas 100 going down at the Apex Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. A really meaningly booked card for the UFC. Nothing of interest on it at all, but performed well. It's a lot of mismatches on the card, a lot of wide odds, meant a lot of early finishes, some fun action. Not a night of notable fights, but a night of fun fights for the UFC. So at least it was not a slog. Wrapping up in the main event, Carlos Prates with a wicked knockout win over Neil Magny. And honestly, I got to say, I was picking, as I think most people were, Prates to go in there and wreck shop. But this was, for the first, 4.5 minutes of it or so, it was a good performance from Magny. It seemed like he came out and really wanted to win. He forced Prates on the back foot a lot, took a lot of shots, looked for takedowns, threw in volume, put Prates on the cage, did everything he could to make it a hard fight for Carlos Prates. But Prates hits really hard, and Magny is, he's maybe losing an extra step of what was once very trustworthy durability at this point. He's always been a fighter that can get blown out early in first round. We've seen it against Lorenz Larkin. We've seen it against Sergio Moraes. Oh, that was submission. We've seen various first round losses for him across his career. So it's not totally new, but it definitely feels like, and I once again realized Prates is a really big hitter here. Those were very skimming punches that shook Magny up and eventually had him out cold, face planted for a couple of minutes there after the fight was over. At 37 with 40 plus fights under his belt for Magny, you got to think at some point that's taking its toll on him. Great performance for Prates, though. He looked measured. He defended takedowns really well, which was great to see. It's something that he's been picking up all through his UFC run, but Magny obviously a big step up on that front from guys like Charles Radkey or even Li Jingliang and Trevin Giles in terms of actual wrestling ability. Magny's he's a much better offensive wrestler than most of those guys. So to see Prates, even when he gave up takedowns in this fight, just be able to bounce right back up and get to his feet or stay on his feet. At one point, reverse a takedown Magny attempted and wind up on top. All really good news for him. Good performance. Really altogether great. And he had call-outs afterward, which we all love. A fighter who has an idea of what fights he wants next. Called out Jack Della Maddalena, who is currently unbooked, and called out Jeff Neal, who's currently unbooked. Both awesome call-outs, both great fights. Somebody here talking about Randy Brown as a potential next opponent, or Carlos versus Buckley, and I believe Buckley is already booked against Ian Gary, so there's not really any path for that. I think the Jeff Neal call-out is a really good one. That seems like a fight he should be aiming at. And, Randy Brown is out there, but at this point, Prates can get a bigger fight than Randy Brown. He can get fights with Michael Page or Jeff Neal or Michael Morales guys that are going to boost his stock a lot more. I don't think he'll get the Madalena fight, but he had a really good reason to call out for the card to be on an Australia card, and very few fighters ever want to be on Australia cards because taxes are so high. So maybe the UFC will find an excuse, see if they can twist Madalena's arm into taking that fight, because Jack Della Maddalena versus Carlos Prates would be one hell of a fun scrap. I'd love to see them put that fight together. But yeah, I mean, man is the truth, honestly. He looks like he's a incredibly experienced fighter at this point in his career, even if he's only had a few UFC fights. And he really looks like he knows what he's in the UFC to do. His game is really tightened up, and Magny is, he's not maybe the test he once was, but he's certainly still a test to see, can you be in the realm of top flight competition? I say it's no longer maybe so much you are absolutely a top 15 fighter if you can beat Neil Magny, but it's still at least you have the ability to compete at a reasonably high level if you can beat Neil Magny, and to go out and absolutely dust Magny like that, that's pretty great. Somebody asking what we should do with Neil Magny right now. Yeah, I mean, Court McGee just got he got a win over Tim Means. You could definitely do Court McGee versus Neil Magny, or you could do Tim Means against Neil Magny. I don't know. Let's see. Who do we got old in this division that's still here? You could do RDA versus Neil Magny too, considering how bad RDA beat him the first time. Somebody saying, I thought Magny had a decent game plan until that KO. I agree. I totally think that Magny was fighting a great fight. High pressure, looking to wrestle, shooting lots of takedowns, getting in on things, trapping Prates against the fence. Doing a lot of the right stuff. But, oh God. Winner of Luque versus Diaz. I keep wanting to forget that Nick Diaz fight is happening. But yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of fights like that out there for Magny. If you want to do Tim Means, Court McGee, Nick Diaz, feels bad, RDA rematch. There's just stuff he can do that I don't care about particularly all that much. Yeah, I don't really care what you do with Neil Magny right now at this point, honestly. But for Carlos Prates, the best thing for him, especially, a big reason for him, or a big feather in his cap, is that as a fearsome knockout artist, I think he's a lot less likely to get fighters ducking him than somebody would like Shavkat would. Honestly, Shavkat is a fighter that I think a lot of opponents look at and think, oh my God, this guy's just going to make me look bad. Or, Sean Brady, another one. Nobody wants to fight Sean Brady. But Carlos Prates throws down. He's a ton of fun. You might get slept by him, but fighters are a lot more likely to take those kinds of fights. No, nobody's arguing to give Prates Vicente Luque. If Vicente Luque is fighting Nick Diaz, I don't have any desire to see him fight Carlos Prates at all. But Prates being a absolute killer, I think people are actually going to be excited to fight him. I think somebody like Jack Della Maddalena might look at that fight and say, hell yeah, I want to have that fight. That looks fun. Where you might look at somebody like Sean Brady and be like, I don't want this guy to lay on me. It's just going to make me look lame. If I get slept throwing down with somebody, everybody will think I'm awesome. But no. Yeah, some noted Prates is no nerd. He is not, no. But I can't hate Carlos Prates is the most redeeming thing about the MMA nerds, because you can tell he does not care about that whole nerd idea at all. He's not using it. He's not identifying with it. He put the glasses on for a minute, and then he's walking out of the cage. He's already got them up on his head. By the time he goes to like see his friends, somebody else has got them entirely. All he wants to do is go out and party. I can respect that. He's not trying to make people think that he's out there painting Warhammer figurines on the weekend. He's not. We all know that. So Carlos Prates is redeeming the MMA nerds for me, because I can handle him. He's not faking the funk, so to speak. Or if he is, like, he's too cool for you to, he puts the glasses on and you're still like, no, that's obviously a very cool person. Anyway, Carlos Prates, another awesome win. That brings us to a middleweight bout, though. Rainer Deritter against Gerald Meerschaert. And I had hopes for GM3 in this fight. I really thought this could be a point for GM3 to come through and shine against a guy a lot of people thought was going to come in and just run shop on GM3. They're like, oh, 2 Division I champion, he must be amazing. GM3 doesn't stand a chance. He's just going to get subbed, all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but Deritter can't strike at all. He hates it. I see almost no fighters out there in top levels of MMA who are as uncomfortable striking as Rainer Deritter. So I was picking GM3 and really hoping he could pull this through. And man, he was doing so good early. And then he almost gets totally knocked out. And I'm just crying to myself, thinking, okay, well, I tried. I rode the GM3 train. And it went nowhere. Then he comes back and he wins round 2. And I was super excited. I'm like, look, he can do this. He can make this happen. God damn it. And then GM3 he did not, after he got hurt in the first round, he did not have any confidence left to strike with Deritter, which is too bad, because I think if he kept that fight standing in the 3rd round, he would have won it. But all he wanted to do was clinch up and try to out-grapple Deritter. And every time all he needed to do was lose 1 takedown battle. And he lost 1 takedown battle and got put in an arm triangle, and that was the fight. I'm still not at all impressed by Deritter's game at all. I do not think it survives at a high level in MMA at all. But it was totally hilarious, sloppy, totally gassed. This is the thing that bugs me. Is it like, it's okay, it's one thing if you've got Joe Pyfer who's got like 10 fights and fights like he's the most chatted out dude on the planet, just in there to throw bows at people. It's one thing if he gasses after a round and a half, but GM3 and Deritter, 2 dudes who are already slow and have each had like 30 pro fights, or I guess in Deritter's fight, 20 pro fights, for both of them to just be absolutely shot to shit by the 3rd round, like, man, that's no fun. So it was a funny fight. It was an entertaining fight, but it was a sloppy as hell fight, and I really think GM3 could have won it. And yeah, Deritter versus the winner of Bo Nickel, Paul Craig, or Jack Hermanson. Those are all really good shouts. I definitely think the Paul Craig, Jack Herman or Bo Nickel fight winner is the best way to go there, just because Hermanson still he's still like I don't know. I still think of Hermansson as like a ranked guy, and GM3 is just he's just a guy in the middle of the division. He's a mid-card middleweight test. So I am for me, him fighting Bo Nickel on the come up, because I think Bo Nickel's going to beat Paul Craig. Hermansson is currently ranked 12th after beating Joe Pyfer. So I think there are better tests for Jack Hermansson. There are better fights out there for Jack Hermansson than Deritter. You could do the Deritter fight, I know. I just don't care about Deritter at all. I don't like anything about his game. I don't like the way he fights. I don't like the way he fences with his arms, and I hate that little like teep kick as your whole offense thing that tall guys do. Yeah, and I know Deritter's not young, so you could really just throw him in there up against Hermansson, or you know what? Throw him in there against Shara Bullet. That'd be fun. Shara is now ranked 14th. He's coming off a win. That would be a stupid, stupid fight. So I don't know how badly I actually want to see Jack Hermansson versus Deritter. I'm going to say go with Shara Bullet against René Deritter. That to me sounds like a much stupider fight to watch. And if Shara gets humiliated by Deritter's grappling, then I'm here for it. And if Deritter gets humiliated by Shara's grappling, then I'm totally here for that too. All right. Otherwise, yeah, for GM3, like I say, he's just a mid-card middleweight. Always has been, always will be. And you can give him any free fight in the division, really. There's Michael Oleksiejczuk, or I don't know, Kevin. Well, you could do the Kevin Holland rematch. I would actually do the Kevin Holland rematch. So, or maybe Pereira, since Pereira just went out there and Pereira's already still way up the division. So yeah, just any random unranked middleweight fighting Gerald Meerschaert is always fine. That's really just the rule. All right. That brings us to a bantamweight fight. Gaston Bolaños against Cortavius Romeus. And I'm really sad Cortavius Romeus lost, because he has the funnest name in MMA, and I want to say it more. But him not being good at all and being a weird guard pulling guy he's like a mini little tiny baby who's Husamar Palhares, but without the actual leg lock skill. So I really want to root for Cortavius Romeus. It's an awesome name. He needs a better nickname. Are you not entertained? Cortavius, are you not entertained? Romeus is way too long. It's way too much. You know, Legionarius or the Emperor or Caesar, whatever else. But yeah, I am kind of shocked by the scoring in this fight. 30-26. I can't be too shocked by the 30-27s for Bolaños. They were two really close rounds. In one round, Bolaños clearly won. Yeah. As I said going in, both these guys have a ton of middleweight energy. Bolaños is a very one shot at a time kickboxer who is still really trying to figure out the change between wrestling and striking. And Romeus, he just, like, his game is busted. He's super uncomfortable in top control, huge slamming takedowns, hugely strong, really dynamic and fast, pick Balanos up, would like slam him down, and then immediately let himself get swept, trying to go for arm bars, guard grappling, all that nonsense. I think that it was a 29-28 Balanos. I can see the arguments for 30-27. 30-26 doesn't really sit well with me at all. Every round was competitive, even if Romeus did get hurt in the second round. Still, a fine win for Balanos. Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention, really awesome. It's actually not a 12-6 elbow. Somebody in the comments talking about it being a 12-6 elbow. The rule of the 12-6 elbow, which is also why I'm glad that we got rid of the 12-6 elbow as a rule. The thing that even refs would forget all the time with 12-6 elbows is that the clock doesn't move. The only elbow that is a 12-6 elbow is if you're literally right over somebody going up and down. If you're on your back and going down, that is a 9-3 elbow. That is not a 12-6 elbow. The only time a 12-6 elbow counts was when you are literally right over somebody going straight up and down. If you're going straight up and down, but your whole body is at a slight angle, not a 12-6 elbow. Never a foul. Never should have been called in any fight. So, but glad to see that cool elbow from Balanos. It was actually a really fun, scrambly, ugly fight. Very much like two blue belts grappling out there. Chaos in all positions, no control at any time. And somebody noting that the 12-6 thing came from the karate ice breaking thing. I've actually heard, so that was Joe Rogan's old line on that. I think at one point I talked to Big John about this, and this may be slightly apocryphal and bad memory on my part because I talked to him a while ago and it was a big, wide-ranging conversation. But I know he has told this story is that, the big reason that the 12-6 thing was mostly because it was like the point of the elbow can go right into the eye kind of thing. But anyway, whatever it is, it was always a stupid rule. It never made any sense. You can literally grab somebody's head and stick your knee in their eye. You can take somebody and elbow them like this in the eye. You can take your whole fist and put a knuckle straight into their eye. Like, the elbow is not some secretly much worse device. You can heel kick somebody in the eye. You can have your toe go straight into somebody's eyeball, and that is not a foul. It's not a foul to toe poke somebody in the eye. So there's really no reason that it ever should have been a foul. Otherwise, fun fight between Balanos and Romeus. I don't know if there's a fight that I care about Balanos having next. He's just kind of filling out the bottom of the bantamweight division. You could put him in there against somebody like, I don't know, Vinicius Oliveira or Jean Matsumoto coming off his win over Brad Katona. I mean, Oliveira's probably on the way to bigger things with the win over Ricky Simone, but just any random dude. I don't know. Nothing in there that screams, oh my God, this guy deserves some kind of special fight. Somebody saying Balanos versus Hani Yaya, and sure, why not? I don't care. All right. That brings us to a woman's strawweight bout. Jillian Robertson, Luana Pinero, and Robertson, I did not think this strawweight move would work out so well for her, but her size is really getting put to good use in this division. Her having the extra strength really makes up for her lack of speed, and she is still a very good, dominant grappler whenever she can tangle somebody up and pull them to the mat. Pinero, she did better than she's done in other fights that I've seen her have. I think they talked about her going to a new camp with Colin Oyama now, I think, and she really is a good athlete who needs a lot of tuning in her game, and it looks like she's starting to get an idea about some like clinch control and throwing combinations. She threw out a lot more volume in this fight, which was really good because Robertson, rather, not Anderson. She's not from the X-Files. Robertson, her striking is amazingly uncomfortable. I will say, to her credit, and this is a really good thing for her career and her future, she is no longer a fighter whose confidence gets shot by being forced to strike. This is the thing we've seen out of Robertson in the past couple of fights now, is that she can actually spend multiple rounds or multiple minutes on her feet having to strike, and it doesn't break her mentally. In the past, whenever she'd be forced into a striking battle, you could see the confidence just slowly drain out of her. In this fight, she lost a whole round. And then she just came right back, got on the grind, got in on a takedown, got Pinero down, and spent the round on top of her doing work. So it's better for Robertson. She will never be a comfortable striker. She'll never be a happy striker. She's always going to be a grappler who is lost in open space. She doesn't have a sense of distance or range or how her body should move when it's not connected to somebody else physically, when she doesn't have somebody else tied up. But yeah, she can certainly, in this division where she can be big and she can just kind of drag people to the mat, she can make a lot of stuff happen. Fights with, let's see. Yeah, there's the mention of the loser between Dern and Hibash coming up. That's not a bad idea. They've got a fight at UFC on ESPN 63 in December. Or you've got, let's see. You got Tisha Pennington coming off a win just now. That'd be a fun fight. Yeah, Lupe Godinez is coming off a loss, but you could do winner loser. Robertson's currently ranked 14th, but she'll probably get bumped up a little off of that. So fights like Godinez or Hill. But yeah, I would probably say like the loser of Hibash Dern or Pennington. Oh, no, that's right. Pennington, did she retire? Let's see. Tisha Pennington retired. No, I don't see anything about Pennington retiring, so maybe she did, but I haven't seen it. Anyway, that said, Robertson's got some really quality fights outside the top 5 of the women's strawweight division right now. Pretty much anybody in that 6 through 15 range that's willing to fight her would be a good match, whether it's Angela Hill, Lupe Godinez, Amanda Hibash, Mackenzie Dern, or Marina Rodriguez, or Pennington. Those would all be fun fights. And for Luana Pinero, she just needs to go back. She needs to keep with what she's doing. I think that her throwing volume and looking, set to try and contain Robertson's grappling was all a good look from her. I don't think there's like, oh, she needs a camp change or she needs whatever. She just needed a lot of work already in the UFC, and this was just a reaffirmation of that. She could fight somebody like, Denise Gomes got a win here, or Elise Reed got a recent win, or Jacqueline Amorim, or Ariane Carnelossi. Just, any of the women swim around at in the middle of that division. All right, that brings us to a middleweight bout: Mansour Abdul Malik against Dushko Todorovic. And this was an absolute execution. It was, I think, set up to be that way. Todorovic gets really badly hurt in the first rounds of every fight. Malik is clearly a real top-level athlete with a lot of power and speed. I don't know though. Like, he started his career out at MMA Masters, and now he is working with Extreme Couture in Vegas. And I can't help feeling like Abdul Malik is going to be one of those fighters who has a ton of potential forever, and I don't know if he's going to have any of the base to really achieve the way he should with it. Like, he could be, I think Extreme Couture could turn him into a top 15 fighter with very little work, just on his raw physicality. But Masters is not a place to teach anybody fundamentals. And my feeling on Extreme Couture is that they are more kind of a vibes camp than a technique camp. And that's not to hate on Extreme Couture. It sounds like an insult, but just what I mean is that, like, Jackson Wink was a vibes camp for a long time. And that, like, if they took a fight, if you have a fighter that already knows how to fight, that's the kind of camp that will help them make late career adjustments, that will help them calm down, center themselves, that will teach them game planning, that will teach them management of a fight, but not necessarily a camp that I think of like, oh, you're going to get really good wrestling fundamentals, grappling fundamentals, striking fundamentals, just because you're there letting Sean Strickland run sparring camps or run sparring sessions on you, I don't know about that. So, because, there were a couple things with this fight, and I don't want to be down on Malik because I think he's a great prospect. But, like, they're talking early on, they're like, oh my God, look at how natural and smooth his stance switch is. Just constantly, he can shift so naturally. Then you watch him punch and you realize that he steps through every punch and squares his stance every single strike he throws, so that he's off balance with every single strike. He reminds me a lot of, rankings, who's the light heavyweight, of Alonzo Menefield right now, where you watch Menefield and early in his career, or Eric Anders too, where they came into the UFC just being able to throw with a ton of power, but it took so long for them to figure out how to throw without getting totally off balanced. And Malik has some of that kind of energy to him, where it's just like, it's obvious all the speed is here, all the power is here, all the dynamic ability is here, but the actual footwork and the, they were talking, right as Bisping is talking about his great fight IQ, he's just leaving his leg to get totally tangled up by Todorovic for minutes on end, where it's like, all you got to do is make this guy stand up again and you can annihilate him. He still won by knockout. He's still an extremely dominant force. It's a great look. The kid's got a bright future. Like I say, I think just with Extreme Couture having him do a bunch of sparring, they can turn him into a top 15 fighter with no problem. But he's clearly a fighter who could be a title contender. That, I don't know. Right now, his game is very raw, and he is, he's already he's 27 without a lot of time in the sport, so there's a lot of time for him to grow still. But I'd like to see, I don't know, I'd like to see him make some big leaps. He feels like a fighter who, even 5 years from now, he could suddenly just have things click and be an incredibly potent force in the octagon. So that brings us to a strawweight bout: Denise Gomes, Karolina Kovalich, and this fight just made me a little sad. Not a great performance from Gomes. She had the power. She did what I will say. She did well to manage clinches and be physical in clinches and not let Kovalich outwork her and out hustle her there. But I also just feel like that's Kovalich being old. She's near 40, and this is a fight that, 8 years ago, she would have won. She would have beat Denise Gomes. She would have got clipped a couple times, but with the amount of space Gomes gave, or the amount of clinching Gomes gave up, the amount of opportunities Gomes gave up for Kovalich to slow her down, the random spinning, the body locks, all that stuff, a younger Kovalich, she could have won this fight, but it's no longer happening, and it just makes me feel bad. So, I don't know what the future is for her, but it feels like at this point she's just kind of running out the end of her career. Hopefully, she seems like she's having a lot more fun out there than she used to. And she doesn't seem like she's just hates fighting or is just, getting beat up. So I'm not feeling so bad about it the way I used to, but it also just doesn't feel like she's, there's something meaningful coming out of all this. For Gomes, she could have a fight with somebody like Yasmin Lucindo, would be fun, or I've already mentioned like Jacqueline Amorim, Mariani Carnelossi, all these fighters who are on some wins right now. Ketlin Souza could be a good one, or just any fight, random, really. She's got some skills. She's got some physical skills, but her game needs so much tuning still. She backs up a lot. She spins a lot. She defaults to things that are not winning strategies at all. So there's a lot to work out still in her fighting. That brings us to the cruelest fight on the card: Elizeu Zaleski, Zach Scrogin. If you listen to the Vivisection this week, you heard us say that Zaleski, despite not getting a knockout in the last 6 years, would probably get one here. Scrogin was tailor-made to be knocked out by Elizeu Zaleski, a fighter who really only exists or thrives on the regionals fighting on the front foot and has no defensive acumen, no striking technique, is just not ready at all, has only been fed the softest can matchups. They threw him in there on no notice against Elizeu Zaleski, and Zaleski absolutely annihilated him in 1 minute and 15 seconds. It was one of those, it looked like the first time Scrogin had ever been hit really clean in his career. He got hit once, and he was down, and he was covered up, and that was it. That was over. As I was very cruel to point out, with the name Zach Scrogin is never destined for greatness. There's never going to be a statue dedicated to a guy named Zach Scrogin. I'm sorry, but it's just the way it is. Still, I'm very happy to see Zaleski get a win. He's such an old dog in this game. Always fun. They need to rebook that Dalby rematch if Dalby isn't hurt and out for too long. I absolutely want to see that Dalby rematch ASAP. Otherwise, let's see. Who else is in there for welterweights that Zaleski has not fought yet, that aren't booked right now, that are coming off a win? You could put him in there against Jake Matthews, who got a win, I guess, but I'm not ever really excited for a Jake Matthews fight. Or I don't know, D-Rod. D-Rod beat Alex Morono. So yeah, you could do if Dalby isn't ready to go, do D-Rod versus Zaleski. I'd love to watch that. For Scrogins, get him the worst matchup you can get in the welterweight division. If Reese McKee is still around, do Scroggins versus Reese McKee. Or do him against Kiefer Crosby. Something like that. But give the kid a real softball. He's not ready. All right, that brings us to a welterweight bout. Charles Radkey, Matthew Semmelsberger. And this is another one we talked about on the Vivi a lot this week. Talking about why I like Prates so much as a fighter who sees simple tools that his opponents use and stops them. In the Magny fight, you notice he had one arm under Magny's butt, one arm across his face as Magny was going for a single leg. And Magny tried to dump him and just ended up getting dumped on his back because Prates read the situation correctly and just defended the takedown. When he fought Charles Radkey, he said, oh my God, this guy's got a left hook. That's all he wants to throw. He always throws his left hook. So Prates just reached out and grabbed it and stopped it. And Radkey's whole game disintegrated. Semmelsberger must have seen that fight, but he is so deep in the horrible shot confidence zone. He has been absolutely shattered by his losses. I really think the Chaos Williams and then the Morono losses, even with the success he had over Jake Matthews, AJ Fletcher, Martinson, I think those losses, they really got in his head. And the fights he's had since then, he has been he doesn't know what to do with himself. And he went out there and it's just like, this guy is just going to try to hit you with left hooks. And the first thing he did is get nearly knocked cold by a left hook. To the point, I honestly think this was an early stoppage. Semmelsberger, he got hit again. He fell forward and he caught himself falling forward. That to me is a point where it's like, okay, a fighter can recover. He can get back up. He can maybe do something. But at the same time, Semmelsberger just looks done. It didn't need to go on. We didn't need to see him actually get knocked out to know that he was not going to survive in this fight. It's fine. It's an early stoppage, but it's fine. I'm not going to rail against it. And yeah, this is the thing that I was talking about. Prates is just like, so many fighters do not see and solve the simple tools. They do not see the simple problem and just say, oh, I can solve that. They see the simple problem like, oh, I got to avoid that. I got to just stay away from it. I got to just try and not let it happen by not being near it rather than finding the solution that stops that. That, it was like, I'm trying to think, what was the Dan Henderson fight? The late career Dan Henderson might have been the Michael Bisping rematch. Honestly, I think it was the Michael Bisping rematch that he had with Henderson where he won. And Bisping just kicked Hendo's right arm over and over again. He just threw right high kicks all the time. It's just like, great. You just took away the whole tool. All Hendo is looking to do is hit you with the right hand. Just kick the goddamn arm. And he can't take the hand away at that point. There are solutions out there, and so often they just get ignored. So Semmelsberger very much did not have the solution to the one thing Radkey was going to do. solid win for Radkey, but for Seberger, just he's cooked. I don't know, He was fun. He was here for a minute, and I think the UFC needs to let him go. At the very least, he needs to get his confidence back somewhere else where the lights aren't so bright. All right, that brings us to a bantamweight bout. Damon Blackshear, Cody Stamann. And, Stamann also, he's a fighter who I think everybody seems to have just figured out he's not dangerous, which has always been his problem. He's always been a very difficult fighter to beat, but he's never been a fighter who does a lot of work to beat his opponent. And Blackshear, he looked better with his striking. He looked more willing to throw. He looked more comfortable throwing kicks and putting out punches and keeping Stamann at arm's reach for a guy his size. That's great. Love to see that out of Blackshear. Hurt Stamann standing. But I also just can't help thinking that so many fighters now are just seeing Stamann as a guy who they don't need to worry about. And even if he's tough to hurt, even if he's tough to beat, he's got a lot of miles on him. If you're just not dangerous, people are just going to go after you. They're gonna take fights to you without fear. And man, it sucks, but he's now lost 6 of his last 8 fights. And, for a guy who was hanging in with all sorts of very good fighters for a long time, it now just feels like he's not there anymore. And I hate to see it, but it's also, he was never a lot of fun, so I can't feel terrible about it. But I'm glad to see Blackshear get this win. Blackshear does have a very fun scrambling game. That sub he hit was really a lot of fun, and I love to see him get a good submission win like that. Maybe put Blackshear in with, let's see, who we got at bantamweight right now. Somebody like Charles Jourdain. Do Blackshear Jourdain. That would be a lot of fun, especially with Jourdain. His whole live on the guillotine game he's had lately. I think Blackshear has just the perfect kind of scrambling game to make him work. So I'd love to see that fight. All right. That brings us to a middleweight bout. Tresean Gore, Antonio Tricoli, and good win for Gore. Tricoli is not a good fighter, but he is a bully, and he does come out hot, and Gore did a great job just going in, grabbing him, slamming him early, making this a physical fight, putting the fight on Tricoli. Anybody who's ever had to deal with a bully, there's no better way to deal with a bully than to bully them. And the moment Tricoli felt like he was getting horsed around and that the fight was being taken to him physically, it seemed like he just kind of quit out of it. So, great win for Gore. Tricoli is more Instagram than MMA, so not a shocking win, but I am glad to see Gore, after all of his injuries and his layoffs and all that, come out and look improved. Look like he was determined and knew how to win. Finally, that brings us to a women's bantamweight bout. Melissa Mullins, Claudia Segula, and Segula is just not good. Mullins struggled early in that fight. She's had a lot of confidence issues, I think, after realizing that her striking is just bad, and needs a lot of work. And she came out looking very tentative in this fight. But the moment she realized that Segula had no answer for her aggression, no answer for her grappling game, then we saw Mullins turn it up, get on top, put Segula away in round 2. Much more dominant second round after she was clear Segula didn't have an answer for the aggression that Mullins could bring to the fight. Not a great fight, but the kind of wins Mullins needs to keep getting to keep improving in that fight. And eventually she needs to try making the bantamweight division. That division's still just such a goddamn mess. overall, for a card that had no meaning and no real interesting fights on it, it ended up being pretty fun, honestly. Deritter Meerschaert was a complete mess. We got a fun submission late, was back and forth. Prates looked absolutely dominant. Balanos Romeus was not a high-level fight at all, but was fun and back and forth all the way through. We had a bunch of finishes. All things considered, it was, I would give this like a solid 3.5 out of 5, 3 out of 5, meaningless, but not awful. So, not going to do any bonus stuff this week because I'm all on my own. But we will be back next week for UFC 309. In the meantime, please subscribe, hit like, subscribe to our Substack, support us there. The link is in the bio down below. You can find me on Substack at zanesimon.substack.com. And, of course, you can find me on Twitter at @TheZaneSimon. And, next week will be UFC 309, so join us for that as well. We'll be talking John Jones, Stipe Miocic, Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler 2, and Mauricio Ruffy catching a body against James on top. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. See you then. Adios.